For this problem, we're asked about the probability of obtaining two heads in a row when you flip a coin. To start with, what is the probability of getting heads just if you flip the coin once? And the answer to that is 50%, or as a probability, 0.50. The reason being is there's two options. You can either get heads or you can get tails. So it's two choices. And in the numerator of this fraction, if we're talking about heads, that's one of the two choices, and 1 divided by 2 is equal to 0.50. That's your probability, or you could interpret it as 50%. Using the notation that we have, we would write this as the probability of flipping heads is 0.50. So that's just if you do it once. But this question is saying, well, what if you do it twice? 2 times in a row. I'm going to write the probability like this. What is the probability of getting heads followed by another heads? And here we have these two what we call independent events. If these events are independent of one another, we can apply the multiplication rule for probabilities, which says the following. You can take the probability of getting heads in the first attempt and simply multiply it to the probability of getting heads in the second attempt. So if you have these two events in a row, you can just consider the probabilities individually. I know the probability of getting heads on the first attempt is 0.5, but that's going to be the same thing as this value here. So I'm going to put 0.50, and we're multiplying that to 0.50. And you can do this in the calculator if you want to. You get 0.25. And that's the answer to the first part of this question. The probability of getting two heads in a row when flipping a coin is 0.25, so a quarter of the time. The second part of this problem says well, what if we repeated this 10,000 different times? How many times would this event happen? And this is simply a matter of taking the number 10,000 and multiplying it to the probability. So again, if you need to, you can go right to your calculator to get this number, and this is going to be 2,500 times. So this would be an interpretation of what this value, what you can do with this value. This is the likelihood that it occurs, and if you're talking about 10,000 different events, you can multiply those two numbers together to get the value that we have here. I want to go one step further. This wasn't in the question, but just something to think about. Well, what's the probability of obtaining 4 heads in a row, for example? So that would be, what's the probability of getting heads, 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 and then heads? Again, these are all independent events. You flip it the first, second, third, and fourth time, and they shouldn't influence one another. And we can apply the multiplication rule, not twice, but a total of 4 times. So this would be the probability of getting a heads times the probability of getting heads, and so on. So essentially, what we can do is multiply 0.50 to itself, the total of 4 times. And you could just enter, this into a calculator pretty quickly. But if your calculator has an exponent function, this is 0.50 to the power of 4. So you're raising that to the 4th power. It's something that can save you time, so you don't have to type as many multiplications. So this is 0.50 to the 4th power, and I get 0.0625. So that wasn't in this question, but I just wanted to go a couple of steps further to say there's nothing special about 2. It could have been 4 times in a row, or getting 7 heads in a row. You would just take that value and multiply it to itself that number of times, And a very fast way to do that is by using an exponent.